Good morning, all of you. In this video, we can go through some of the applications of lithium, then cesium, selenium, and barium. Lithium, Li, cesium, Cs, selenium, Se, and barium. Okay. So first of all, lithium battery. Lithium battery. See, lithium batteries, mainly two types are there. Primary lithium batteries are there, as well as secondary lithium batteries. Okay, primary and secondary lithium batteries are there. Primary and secondary lithium batteries, and also among these, see, batteries which are having lithium as their anode. Lithium which is used as anode, they are called as lithium battery. Okay, batteries in which lithium is used as anode, it is called as lithium battery. And also the batteries, these batteries, it is otherwise called as lithium metal batteries. Okay, lithium batteries or lithium metal batteries. And these lithium using anode, lithium which is used as an anode, it is called as a primary battery. It is called as primary battery. Lithium which is used as anode, it is primary battery. And also these primary batteries means they produce electricity by a chemical reaction. Okay, a chemical energy, it is converted to electrical energy in the case of this primary lithium batteries. Okay, chemical energy, it is converted to electrical energy. And also one more important point to be noted down is that this primary lithium batteries, they are not rechargeable. They are not rechargeable. But in the case of secondary batteries, secondary lithium batteries, they are chargeable. Okay. And also this lithium batteries, it will be having very high charge density, or they will be having a long life. They will be having a high charge density, or they will be having a long life compared to other normal batteries. And also this primary lithium batteries can be the main distinction between primary and secondary is that primary lithium batteries, they are not rechargeable, while the secondary batteries are rechargeable. Okay, and also see here in these lithium batteries, in the secondary lithium battery, what happens is that this lithium ions, in the case of secondary lithium batteries, this lithium it is it will be moved as ions from anode to cathode. Lithium will be moving as Li plus ions, and it can be moved from anode to cathode. And for that movement of the lithium ions, some intercalated lithium compounds are used. Intercalated lithium compounds are used as the cathode material. Okay, intercalated lithium compounds are used as the cathode material for the movement of lithium ions from anode to cathode. And also here in the secondary lithium batteries, this lithium metal, it is not using as the anode. Okay, lithium not used as anode in the case of secondary lithium batteries, but in the case of primary, this lithium is used as the anode. Okay, and also pure lithium, it will be highly reactive also. Highly reactive, even it reacts with moisture present in the air itself. Okay, but lithium which is present in the lithium ion batteries, it is a less reactive compounds. Normally lithium is highly reactive, but lithium which is present in lithium batteries, they are less reactive. They are less reactive. Okay. Then some of the uses of this lithium batteries, they are used in portable consumer electronic devices. They are used in portable electronic devices. So many uses are given in your textbook. And also they are used in electric vehicles. Electric vehicles. Then it is then the battery requires, this battery requires 0.15 to 0.3 kilogram of lithium per kilowatt hour. Okay, per kilowatt hour. 0.15 to 0.3 kilogram of lithium per kilowatt hour. Okay, so this primary batteries use a charged cathode. Primary batteries use a charged cathode which acts as an electroactive material. So these are some of the uses of this lithium batteries. Okay. So the two important points to be noted down is that there are primary, two types are there, primary and secondary lithium batteries. In primary batteries, lithium is acting as the anode, but in the case of secondary, lithium is not used as anode, and the primary lithium batteries, they are not rechargeable, but the secondary lithium batteries are rechargeable. Okay. Next is the application of cesium in photovoltaic cells or solar cells. Use of cesium in photovoltaic cells. What are photovoltaic cells? Photovoltaic cells means the cells which convert or the device which converts light energy into electrical energy. Conversion of light energy to electrical energy. Conversion of light energy to electrical energy, and this photovoltaic effect, it was discovered by a French physicist Edmond Becquerel in 1839. So in the photovoltaic cell, the process occurring is that when light falls on the photovoltaic cell, or we can simply say it as a solar cell. So when light falls on a solar cell, what happens is that it might be three chances are there. The light can be absorbed, or it can be reflected, or it can the light will be simply moves through that particular cell, isn't it? These three processes can take place in a solar cell when light falls on it. It can be absorbed, it can be reflected, or it can be passed through it. So the photovoltaic cell or the solar cell, it will be having some semiconducting materials. This solar cell will be having some semiconducting materials, and the semiconducting materials means it will be having both the properties of metals as well as insulators. It can act as, or it will be having the properties of metals as well as insulators. So this property of the semiconducting material, this is capable of converting light into electrical energy. Okay, so this property of the semiconducting material, that means semiconducting materials, it can act as metals or it can act as insulators. So this property helps in the conversion of light energy into electrical energy. So normally the conventional solar cells, it is prepared, or it will be having crystalline silicon atoms. Conventional solar cell will be having crystalline silicon atoms, and also it can be monocrystalline silicon or multicrystalline silicon. And also the monocrystalline silicon, it is much more effective or efficient than multicrystalline. Crystalline silicon, mono, or it can be mono or multi, and among this mono and multicrystalline silicon, this monocrystalline solar cells or monocrystalline solar cells will be having higher efficiency than the multicrystalline solar cells. And also this solar cell, sometimes it will be having a perovskite structure. Its active layer, the solar cell, in the solar cell, its active layer will be having perovskite structure. Perovskite. It will be having a perovskite-like structure. And such type of solar cells, we can call it as a perovskite solar cell. Okay, those having the structure which include a perovskite structured material as the active layer, it is called as the perovskite solar cells. Perovskite solar cells. Okay, will be called as perovskite solar cells. And also normally this perovskite structured material means it will be having organic or inorganic tin. What is the formula of tin? Tin is SN. It will be having organic or inorganic tin. Tin is SN. Or it can be have lead halide based material. Lead halide based material. It will be having lead halide based material. And also this perovskite structures, normally it will be having some unique features which helps in the applications of solar cells. Okay, so this perovskite materials, normally it will be having an addition of cesium. A cesium coating will be there in this perovskite solar cells. Cesium, CS. Okay, it will be having cesium, an addition of cesium to this perovskite solar cells. So while during the addition of the cesium to this perovskite solar cells, what happens is that it increases or it enhances the photo stability of that particular cell. It increases the photo stability of that particular cell. And also this cesium, this process, it is called a cesium doping. Okay, cesium doping in the perovskite solar cells. Cesium doping, so it increases in the photo stability and also it enhances the thermal stability of that material. So it increases thermal stability as well as the photo stability of that particular material by cesium doping. Okay. And also this another advantage of the cesium doping is that it enhances the performance of the device. It increases the efficiency of the device, or it enhances the performance of the device. That is another important advantage of this cesium doping. Okay. And also recently some of the inorganic cations, along with cesium, rubidium are also used to this perovskite structure. Inorganic cations, in addition to cesium, rubidium is also found useful in adding to this perovskite. Okay, and this helps in this combination. It will be helps to boost the power conversion, or it helps to increase the power conversion. It helps to boost the power conversion. Power conversion means from light energy into electrical energy. So by the addition of these also, it increases the power conversion. And also thereby we will be having more thermally stable and effective photovoltaic cells or effective solar cells. Okay, so this is the case of this the use of or the application of cesium in photovoltaic cells. Okay, then the next is selenium. Use of selenium. Selenium, normally it is used in photography, not photography, serography. Serography, you know, I think Xerox means photocopy, isn't it? See, serography, the word itself, xeros means dry and graphy means writing. That is the word meaning. Xeros means dry and graphy means writing. So the technique serography means it is a dry photocopying technique. Dry photocopying technique. See, this process of xeroxing, the main principle behind this xeroxing is that it depends upon the photoconducting nature of selenium. Photoconducting nature of selenium, that is the principle behind this xerox. Photoconducting nature of selenium, that means this selenium will conduct light, will be conducting only in the presence of light. That is what is meant by photoconducting. That means selenium will be conducting only in the presence of light, and it is non-conducting in dark. It is understood, isn't it? Non-conducting in dark and conducts in light. And conducts in light. Okay, that is the property of selenium. So here some of the steps are some of the steps involved in this serography that you have to study, and also in your textbook diagrams are also there. See here what happens is that when light it is reflected from a document, suppose we have to take a photocopy of a particular document and we are passing light through this document. So what happens is that this light, while passing light through this surface, what happens, this light reaches the selenium coated surface. Okay, light reaches the selenium coated surface, and to this selenium coated surface what happens, negatively charged particles of ink. We are using toner, isn't it? Toner means there the ink is there. So the negatively charged particles, it is a dry ink, so negatively charged particles of the ink or toner, they are sprayed through the selenium coated surface. So therefore what happens, the image will be formed on the drum of that particular instrument, okay, that machine. So that is the principle behind this photocopy. So here what happens, light is passed through the document to be photocopied, and there this it reaches the selenium coated drum surface, and through to this selenium coated drum surface negatively charged ink particles are passed over. So an image will be developed on the drum. Okay, that is the principle behind. Then there are so many steps involved in the serography that you can go through one by one. First of all, see, first step, that is the fabrication of photoreceptor and its sensitization. Photoreceptor means there should be a light sensitive receptor present on the photocopier, isn't it? See, for that an aluminum sheet is set up, and in or above this aluminum sheet a 50 micrometer thickness of selenium, it is spread over this aluminum sheet. Okay, a 50 micrometer thickness of selenium. Okay, so this is the selenium film, this shaded portion it is selenium, and the thick portion it is the aluminum sheet. Okay, so this selenium it is spread over this aluminum sheet, and this selenium it is spread by means of vacuum deposition. Okay, very thin film, that is about 50 micrometer, and this is set up. And to this selenium film, what happens, we are passing an electric discharge, or it is connected to a charging device, and it will be utilizing an electric current of 10 raised to 5 volt per centimeter. Okay, so this is the photoreceptor used for this photocopy. Okay, that is the first portion of this photocopier. Then the next is the formation of a latent image, second one. See here, the image to be copied, that is kept on the top of the surface, and it consists of light and dark patterns. See, this is dark, this is light, dark, white, etc. Okay, so what happens is that selenium will be conducting only in the light regions, isn't it? Selenium will be conducting in the light regions. That means the dark portions will be ignored, and the light portions will be selenium will be conducting these light regions. Okay, and here what happens, when the electrostatic discharge occurs, what happens, this reduction takes place to this particular portion. As a result, what happens, the surface potential of this particular receptor, it gets reduced, and at the same time the dark regions will be non-conducting. At the dark portion selenium is not conducting, but at the light region selenium is conducting, and hence it is reduced at that portions. In the light regions it will be reduced. Okay, so what happens is that in the dark region there will not be any change in the potential, or there will not be any change in the current, but in the light regions there will be a change in the potential. So what happens is that in the light regions, what happens, a latent image it is obtained, latent image of that particular document we will be having. Okay, so here see, the light, it will be a latent image is formed here, isn't it? For this dark portion a latent image will be formed here, not this dark portion, this light portion, this latent image is formed here. Okay, so here this dark and light portions are used, and this dark, the image will be falling, the selenium will be activated only in the light portions. Okay, so at that part what happens, surface potential will be reduced, and in the dark portion selenium is non-conducting and there will not be any change in the potential. So thereby we will be having a latent image. Okay, we will be having a latent image. Then the next step, that is the development of latent image. See, usually we are using a toner, isn't it? Sometimes you might have seen in photocopying machines, it's a black powder that we are using as toner, or we are using as ink, isn't it? A very black powder, and this black powder, it will be negatively charged. That means the black powder, it is called as the toner particles, and that will be negatively charged. And then this particle size, this black toner particles, its size is about 10 micrometer. Okay, so imagine how small it is. So it is about 10 micrometer, and this black toner particles, it will be allowed to move through this photoreceptor. Okay, and also photoreceptor, as already seen, it is charged, isn't it? It is reduced, or it will be having some charges, positive charges. So above this photoreceptor, this black toner particles are carried across by using this carrier beads. Okay, so what happens is that as some friction will be developed between these positively and negatively charged particles, and as a result they will be attracted by the charged particles on the photoreceptor. That means this negatively charged particles will be attracted by the positively charged receptors. Okay, so what happens, the toner particles will be adhered on the surface of the receptor. See, the toner particles will be adhered, this plus and minus will be attached. That means the toner particles will be adhered on the surface of the receptor, and therefore a visible image. Already we got a latent image, isn't it? So here we will be having a visible image, that is the a negative print. It cannot be said about a negative print, it is a latent image. Okay, so here we will be having a correct image or a visible image we will be having during this process. Okay, so this is the process involved in development, involved in the change from latent image to visible image. So here we are using, for that we are using toner particles of size 10 micrometer, and it is carried over the photoreceptors. Photoreceptor, it is already charged, so it will be attracted towards this negatively charged toner particles, will be attracted towards the electrostatically charged patterns in the photoreceptor, and therefore the adherence of the toner particles on the photoreceptor occurs, and therefore we will be having a visible image. Next step, that is the transfer of the image. Then we have to take the photocopy, isn't it? So for that we will be using a print paper, and this print paper, it is kept parallel to the photoreceptor. That means the paper will be kept on the surface of the Xerox machine, and then what happens to this print paper is that it will be electrostatically discharged. That means the paper will be having some charge, will be obtaining some charge, positive charge. So since it is electrostatically charged, again what happens, the toner particles which is present on the photoreceptor, it will be transferred to this this print paper. Okay, that means the transfer of the image from the receptor to the print paper. Okay, that is the process occurring here. So first of all we have to keep the print paper parallel to the photoreceptor, and then what happens, then the device is connected to a charging point, so automatically the paper will get electrostatically charged. Therefore the toner particles will be attracted towards the charged printed paper, and therefore the transfer of the image from the photoreceptor to the print paper occurs. Then the next step, that is the fixing. See here, the toner particles, it is then fixed on the paper by melting these toner particles. By some heat is there, some heat is utilized there for the melting of this toner particles. Okay, so that that particular image is printed on that particular paper. Okay, so that is the process called as fixing. That is, the toner particles are fixed over the paper. Then the next is the cleaning. See here, so many toner particles will be adhered on the surface, isn't it? So that the paper should not be clear. So here in this process we have to clean the surface of the paper. So after the transfer of the image from the receptor to the print paper, the toner particles are removed by mechanical means. It can be by mechanical means or by a combination of mechanical and electrostatic means. So the toner particles which are not which are not meant to be there, it is removed by mechanical means or by a combination of mechanical or electrostatic means. Then the last one, that is the erasing of the image. Then see this photoreceptor, it will be having an image, isn't it? So this photoreceptor, it is then exposed to a bright light. So bright light means the whole selenium layer will be conducting, isn't it? That means the surface potential of the receptor gets reduced uniformly, and therefore the latent electrostatic image vanishes, making the photoreceptor readily to be used again. So again it is exposed to bright light so that selenium layer becomes conducting. Okay, so the surface of the receptor, the surface potential of the receptor is again reduced uniformly. All the photoreceptor surface will be reduced uniformly, and they will be having an uniform charge, and therefore the previous image, the latent image, is removed, and it is used, and the photoreceptor, it is ready to be used again. Okay, so that is about the xerography, the use of selenium in xerography. Okay, the main principle is that selenium, it is a semiconducting material, and also it will be conducting in presence of light only and non-conducting in dark. Okay, so that is about selenium, application of selenium in xerography. Next is X-ray, use of barium in X-ray. Use of barium X-ray. Use of barium X-ray. See, barium, it is an X-ray absorber. Barium is an X-ray absorber, and also on an X-ray film, this barium will be appearing in white color. White in an X-ray film. Barium will be showing white color in an X-ray film. Normally this barium X-ray, it is used for radiography. That means in X-ray examination, you have heard of this X-rays, isn't it, in clinical purposes. So this barium X-ray, it is used for the examination of gastrointestinal tract. Gastrointestinal tract, GI tract. Normally it is said as GI tract. Okay, barium X-ray, it is used in GI tract. So barium X-rays, normally it is taken as two series, that is upper and lower GI series. Upper GI series and lower GI series. Upper GI series and lower GI series, and in both cases this barium X-rays, they are used to diagnose the abnormalities present in this gastrointestinal tract, sometimes ulcers or tumors, growths, then inflammatory conditions, etc. will be diagnosed by using this barium X-rays. Okay. Then the first one, that is the upper GI radiography. Upper GI tract radiography. Upper GI tract radiography. So this upper GI tract radiography, it is used to diagnose esophagus, used to diagnose any malfunctioning in esophagus, stomach, and first part of small intestine, that is the duodenum. Duodenum. That is the first part of the small intestine. So in these portions, this upper GI tract radiography is used. Any malfunctioning in esophagus, stomach, and duodenum. And also in such type of here the images are produced by a special form of X-ray, and it is called as fluoroscopy. And this fluoroscopy, it is the images produced by a special form of X-ray. images produced by a special form of X-ray, and also in this along with this fluoroscopy, some orally ingested barium based materials are also used. Orally ingested, orally means we have to consume through our mouth. Okay, so orally ingested barium based material is used along with this technique, fluoroscopy. Okay, and also this fluoroscopy, by using the means of fluoroscopy, we can see the internal organs, that is we can see the movement of internal organs. That means while taking this barium coated material, what happens is that this barium will be coating the inside walls of the GI tract, that is barium will be coating the upper GI tract. Okay, that is we are consuming this barium based material and it will be coating the upper inside walls of the upper GI tract, so that we can see the movement of that particular organs. Okay, the wall lining, their function, size and shape etc. can be visible by taking the X-rays. Okay, so with this upper GI series, by using this upper GI series, that is upper GI radiographic techniques, we can diagnose any abnormalities such as tumors, then ulcers, then hernias, then pouches, inflammation, etc. by using this upper GI tract radiography. Okay, so all these can be identified by using this upper GI series. So the X-ray is to be taken, and that particular X-ray, the images, it is called as fluoroscopy. The technique it is called as fluoroscopy, and there an orally ingested barium based material is used. So while taking this barium, the inside walls of the organs, that means GI tract organs, we can see through by taking the X-rays. Their movement, their functioning, their size, shape etc. can be visible through this X-rays. Okay, therefore any abnormalities present in the upper GI tract can be found out. Then two more points are there. See, two more tests are there. That is the first one, that is the barium swallow, SWALLOW, barium swallow and barium meal. Barium swallow and barium meal. Okay, barium swallow means, barium swallow, first of all, barium swallow means if the pharynx and esophagus, are examined with barium, then that test is called as barium swallow. If the pharynx and esophagus are tested with barium, then it is called as, that test is called as barium swallow. And coming to barium meal means when the esophagus, stomach and the first part of the bowel, they are tested. When the esophagus, stomach and first part of the bowel are tested or examined, it is called as barium meal. Okay, so barium swallow means the test used to examine pharynx and esophagus. Barium meal means the test used to examine esophagus, stomach and first part of the bowel. So that is about the upper GI tract X-ray radiography. Next is the lower GI tract X-ray radiography. Okay, lower GI tract X-ray radiography. Lower GI tract X-ray radiography. See here, this lower GI tract series, it is called as lower GI or barium enema. Barium enema, ENEMA. It is otherwise called as barium enema. The test is called as barium enema. And also this particular test, it is used for the X-ray examination of the large intestine. Large intestine, it is called as colon. So this test is this radiography, it is used for examining colon or large intestine. So here it will be testing in detail the right or ascending colon, the transverse colon, the left or descending colon, the sigmoid colon, and the rectum. So all these parts of the, so it will be clearly checking the large intestine. Colon means so many types, that is right or ascending colon. I don't know the details of this colon, this biological parts, etc. If you want the detail, you can search Google. Okay, I don't know the biological aspect. So the right or ascending colon, right or ascending colon, this test helps in examining the right or ascending colon, then transverse colon, then the left or ascending colon, then the sigmoid colon, and the rectum. Sigmoid colon and the rectum. Okay, so all these parts are diagnosed by this barium, the test barium enema. Okay, here also this lower GI also uses fluoroscopy, just like in the case of upper GI. Here also it uses fluoroscopy and barium based contrast material. Fluoroscopy and barium based contrast material. Okay, fluoroscopy and barium based contrast material, so that we can see, by using this fluoroscopy we can see the movement of the internal organs. And also when when this barium it is given orally, what happens, the lower GI tract, it is filled with barium, and also what happens is that the anatomy of the particular organ can be assessed, and the anatomy and the functions of this large intestine can be assessed by the radiologist. Okay, and also this lower GI tract, it is lower GI tract radiography, it is used to detect tumors, cancers, then ulcerative colitis, then, and also it helps to identify the symptoms like chronic diarrhea, DIARRHEA, I think the spelling is right, chronic diarrhea, then blood in stools, constipation, suspected blood loss, etc. So these are some of the advantages of using this lower GI tract X-ray radiography. So normally this barium enema, it is used to diagnose the large intestine called as colon, and also so many areas of this colon, right or ascending colon, transverse, then left or ascending, sigmoid colon, and the rectum. Here also fluoroscopy and barium based contrast material is used, and thereby the anatomy and functions of the lower GI tract can be analyzed. It can be used to detect tumors or cancers or ulcerative colitis, etc. And also the symptoms of these cases can be diagnosed by this lower GI tract X-ray radiography. Okay, so with this we are coming to the end of this representative elements, and also now you have to study all these applications also. It is very, very important, the applications of this lithium, then cesium, selenium, then barium, etc. It will be asked in 4 mark questions also. So please study well these portions also. Okay, thank you and have a nice day.